Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. If you're listening on the podcast, or watching, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, today I have Brian Rice with me. Brian is somebody who I have seen on both Facebook and Instagram, and I've seen the cars that he has in his collection, or that he has to sell on his eBay store. He has a really cool, interesting collection. I was really interested in talking to him and talking about some of the cars that he has. But first of all, Brian, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Anytime. I think we all struggle to find people in our lives that want to talk about cards. So anytime we can find somebody like-minded, happy to do so.
Yeah, something I always enjoy, of course. So yeah, I always appreciate anyone who comes on and talks to me, no doubts. So let's just start by talking about how you got started in the hobby, and what are some of the things that really interest you when you first started collecting.
Yeah. So I'm in my early 40s. So I think like most people my age, right, we probably started in the late 80s and collecting like 1987 tops is the first thing that, sticks out of my mind of getting it at the grocery store as like a special treat, right? And then you started getting complete sets as like birthday and Christmas gifts. So I still have a lot of those tucked away in my closet of the top sets from those days. And so really enjoyed opening packs and trading with friends and you know growing up and being in the suburbs of Philadelphia, the Phillies were my favorite team, and Mike Schmidt was by far my favorite player. And so one of the things I did with my dad was try to collect all of the Mike Schmidt cards during his player era, right? So that was a fun thing to do. And before there were large shows like the national and the regional shows like the Philly Card Show, like card shows would pop up at the local malls. And so going through like dollar boxes and stuff like that, looking for Mike Schmidt cards that I didn't have was really fun. So that was my primary focus for, the first couple of years. And then once, I think it became like in the early 90s, right? The idea that there's like value behind these cards, right? Like intrigued me, and getting the first like Tough Stuff magazine and Beckett magazine, and seeing how rich I was going to be with all of the cardboard that I was accumulating was fun. But what struck me in those magazines was they had a section that was like, these are the players that are signing fan mail, or right to the teams, and you could get an autograph. So I begged my parents to get a book of stamps, and I think what a book of stamps was like $10 back then. So that allowed me to send five requests out type thing, and I really enjoyed that, right? And I did that for like from between 10 and 12 years old. And then I think as many of us, as we started getting and going into high school age, right, like our collection took a back seat to other things as sports and school, etc. And I still kind of kept track of my Mike Schmidt cards, and tried to pick them up, and I got down to the point that I only needed his rookie card. But at the time, his rookie card was like, I don't know, $300-400 for all back then, right? Which was not in my my budget. So it tucked it all away, and then that's kind of stayed dormant for several years. And then once I graduated college, I started working at a digital marketing agency, and we were starting to do things with eBay. And so it's like early days of eBay, and I happened to search, and I found a Mike Schmidt card on eBay, his rookie, for $20, and I was like, $20. I'm gonna take it. It was beat up to hell, but it completed the collection, and I would say then stayed pretty dormant for a while in terms of my collecting, until my wife and I had our first born almost 10 years ago. And when he was born, he had he has a really complex heart condition. So he was born with half of a heart. And so we spent almost the first year of his life living out of a hospital in an intensive care unit, and was looking for something that I could do to keep my mind off of all of the complexity that we were dealing with. And that might be something that I could think future state of what we could do together when he was older, right? And this is at a time when we didn't even think he was going to survive like 30 days, right? So this was very much a hope, right? Like, oh, when he's 10, this is what we'll do type thing. And so that kept me busy. And I had a colleague that was talking about one of his hobbies was writing to influential politicians and business leaders. And he was trying to get responses in terms of like, how would they solve world problems? And I found it fascinating, his approach, and he mentioned how it was helping improve his communication skills. Because if you think about writing to these people who time is of the essence to them, right? Like it's hard to break through all of the clutter. And so hearing him get responses from, I think he got like Gandhi and Bill Clinton and all these people responding back, I thought, this reminded me of when I was 8 and 9 years old writing to athletes. So I started writing little notes talking about, what my son was going through and, what I would hope to do. Would they, sign something and give an inspirational like message? And it was just a fun thing to do. And that kind of sparked my like love back into the hobby of like, oh, this is really cool and is bigger than just collecting cards.
Yeah, that's an incredible story. Do you mind me asking, how's your son doing right now?
Right now, he's stable. Unfortunately, there's nothing long term for them to do. So he's at a point now that he is. They're showing signs of declining, but he's doing well. He got his Make-A-Wish granted last year, so we had a playground put in the backyard for him. So he loved that. And 2 weeks ago, we got to fly on a plane together as a family, go to Disneyland. So right now, his focus is enjoy life to its fullest, and what that means, we don't know. But he's a special little guy.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that information. And now, all the other questions I had about sports cards seem real trivial.
No, but it's awesome. Like, I think that the hobby, in doing this, you come across with just the human element of it, right? So I wrote to Brett Brown when he was the coach of the Sixers, asking for his autograph and if he would have any inspirational messages type thing. And he wrote back. He didn't sign anything, but he gave me his number and said, give me a call, and called up, and it was him. And he said, come down to practice, bring your son, bring your family, like come hang out. My son also has autism, and so loud environments are really tough. So to go to a sporting event is not something that we could do. And then we have a second child who also is on the autism spectrum. Thankfully, he is heart healthy. But it was special to literally be the only ones in the practice facility besides the team. And they were running scrimmages. And my son thought that was like the greatest thing in the world. Like there's a photo we have of Brett Brown came over to talk to us, and he was talking to my son, and my son just kept like looking around him to try to watch the game instead of watching the coach.
Yeah, you're not important.
You're bothering me type thing. So that was pretty cool. So like moments like that, really matter. And so I think that's part of a collection that I have that I haven't really shared too much of, is that I have a focus of athletes that are dealing with similar things. So I have like an example, like Travis Shaw. He's not a big name like player or whatever, but I saw that he was signing autographs through the mail, and I believe it's his daughter that was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. So I had him sign a card with the hashtag HeartDad. Greg Olson, who now is the football commentator that was with the Panthers and the Bears and I think the Seahawks, his son is a couple months younger than my son, and so he was born with the same disease. So same thing. And then there's a lot of athletes like Dan Marino or BJ Surhoff that their boys have autism, and they've been great for the community. So I've gotten their autograph with like special like autism hashtags and stuff like that. So those are things that I'll tuck away and give to my boys, and just are kind of like a special connection that I think we as fans have a tendency to like dump on a player if they're performing poorly, right? Without the context of like, what are they dealing with in their lives, and things like, medical disabilities and stuff like that. impact us all, right? And I think that part of it is kind of interesting to to me. So I always am keeping an eye out. I think there's a soccer player whose son has HLHS yet that I haven't been able to lock down, and a couple others that I know that are advocates for autism related charities that I've been keeping on the radar to see if I can add in my collection. So that part I think is kind of unique to me and my collection. So
Yeah, absolutely, incredible. And I have talked a lot on my channel about my love and passion for science stuff from important athletes to the history of the sport and things of that nature, having that personal connection with those players. Well, you just taken that to a whole another level. That it's amazing to see that output of receptiveness from those athletes to do those things for your kids. And so I couldn't imagine what those feelings of that personal connection must mean for you and your family.
Yeah. It's really awesome, right? It shows the compassion of things. So like Markelle Fultz, I think, is one of the biggest NBA busts that the Sixers have drafted, but he was so great to my kids. I will always root for him, right? It was kind of crazy seeing a kid that probably could be my son, there playing basketball with my two boys. So that was rather cool. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, let's go back to maybe talking about the hobby itself, and maybe going on the subject of just things that you've just sort of enjoyed collecting over the years in terms of signed stuff. I mean, I know you do all the four major sports: basketball, football, hockey, and baseball. We also do some pop culture stuff too, which I wanted to ask you about, but we can talk about a little bit later. So let's start with the four major sports. And what do you go about collecting, and how do you go about obtaining those cards?
Yeah, in the beginning, it was very focused on like through the mail requests, right, and trying to focus on the players that I grew up watching and enjoyed. So I think like many people, I used the online resources that were available, like Sports Card Forum or sportscollectors.net to get addresses. And then I try to take it up a level and go for the athletes that you don't commonly see, right? So people would say like, oh, a Mike Trout or a Wayne Gretzky or whoever, right? They'll never sign their fan mail, and it almost became its own little passion project to see how I could break through the clutter myself, and just thinking about that colleague that was having success on the political side of things. It was like, well, what can I influence on my end that might generate a higher response? And so it could be the letter itself. It could be the size of the envelope or the package that it's in, or what's, on there, kind of bells and whistles. And so I did a really cool project a couple of years ago. It wasn't card related, but I did it with autographed hockey pucks. I thought like that they look so cool with the logos and the signatures. And so I picked 100 players, like the top 100 players that I could think of that were alive and active, right? Hall of Famers or future Hall of Famers, and I wrote them all a letter, and I included $50 check into the charity that I knew that they had supported. So I researched all of their things, and I said, hey, if you respond back, right, I will match that donation to DuPont Children's Hospital, Nemours in Delaware, where my son is treated, right? And I thought, I'll be lucky if I get 25% of the people to respond, but at the very least, I've made charitable donations to their charities and hope they use the checks or whatever. And so I ended up getting 98 of the 100 back, and it was like, we're talking Mario Lemieux, Alex Ovechkin, like names that you wouldn't see like typically signing through the mail, and the fact that they took the time to do that, I thought was fantastic. So that's was a fun thing that I did. And I think at some point, many of us probably look at our collection and we've accumulated a lot. And I started thinking of like, how do I consolidate and focus on what I really want to enjoy and has more personal, value to me, and also things that I think have longer term appeal, right? So, I think I had I still have a bunch of them that I'm working my way through, but I loved Peyton Manning when he was playing. And so, either through the TTM groups trading or getting him through the mail, I think I got 30 or 40 of his, low end cards autographed. And I thought to myself, long term, maybe these are worth $100, $150 now. 10 years from now, they're probably only going to be worth somewhere in that same range. Maybe it's 150, 175 type thing. But what would it look like if, I had a card that was low pop and high end, right? So like his Topps Chrome Refractor from 1998, I think had at the time a pop of 1. And I thought, oh, well, that's a beautiful card, right? I would love to have that. If I can sell what I have, I can upgrade into getting that card and then getting it at a paid signing. And so I started, participating a lot more in paid signings to try to get the higher end, or to be able to guarantee more uniqueness. I think that, especially on some of like the 1969 tall boys, I think those are made for inscriptions, right? They just have so much real estate on them to be able to get things like their nickname or their career, achievements. I think makes those cards, way more valuable. So I built out my collection focused on like the more of the all-time greats in all of the, all of the sports. And now I'm trying to whittle that down to say, all right, within those sports, maybe what are the top 25 players in each, grouping that I would want to have long-term, and then upgrade, right? So great, I have a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar rookie, that's beat up and creased and, missing a corner, right? How could I get something that's high grade, that's autographed, that, has visual appeal? And I actually think those long-term have way better growth potential than the beat up cards. Or, I'm sure you see in the hobby, which I think is like the worst trend, is all these cards that just have trading card on the label, right? Like so I'm trying to make sure that I'm getting higher grade cards and thinking about the quality of the signature and, the visual appeal for them as well. And then, as you mentioned, I really got into the pop cards maybe about two years ago. And I just thought that there were so many like promoters getting into the space in the sports cards world, that the volume of these things being signed is through the roof. Like I think you collect basketball as well. Like Patrick Ewing's doing a signing at the end of this month, and he rarely signs. The amount of 1986 Fleer cards that are going to be autographed and, hitting the market is just like, I can't even imagine, right? I'm sure it's going to go from being a pop under 100 to being a pop 1,000 in 3 months time, once they're all back from PSA and stuff like that, right? And so I was trying to think of other things that I enjoyed that would have global significance. And my family, we love Disney and the Marvel movies, and so the idea of like getting like their quote unquote rookie cards autographed on things that are already low numbered, like most of the cards are only to like 199, was really appealing to me, right? Because now you have the cool character image of that actual actor. And these are things that are not going to go away. Like people are always going to love Captain America or Iron Man, etc. And I just thought that was so cool to have it. So I have like, where's a cool one that I got recently? So like, number to 125, Robert Downey Jr. signed Iron Man card, right? Like this is, it's so cool to me, right? Like it's like E-list actor with the, iconic character, those are things I will keep, but I feel confident that market is only going to explode, because when you look at the types of items that people typically get, it's the movie props or the posters or the 8x10s. They're way less people collecting cards. And I just think that that's going to carry over when people start thinking about, oh, I like collecting baseball cards, but I also like, Stranger Things, or, I like the Marvel, etc. Type thing, that's just going to keep growing. So I've been doing that. And then the other fun one that I've been doing, I think for parents that are doing with their kids, is that when you rip packs of cards, there's often the blank, like the blank card in between, to make sure that you're not searching them for the hits and stuff like that. So a lot of the like the animators at Disney, like they do their fan mail. So I started writing for my kids and getting like Mickey Mouse things or the Monster Inc. characters and stuff like that. And I just think that's like such a cool thing to take something that was going to go in the trash and, $1 later in postage, and there's a unique art card that's created from it. So I've been enjoying that almost more than some of the sports stuff, right? Because I think you start seeing the same thing over and over again. It's like, all right, it's March, Ricky Henderson must be doing a signing, and then 2 months later Ricky Henderson's doing a signing. Like there's just not a uniqueness or maybe a cool factor to me anymore. It's kind of rub off of its becoming commonplace on some things.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what are the differences when it comes to obtaining those signed cards with the pop culture figures, the actors, or the other people involved in those movies or television shows? Because I don't know. I know that there are some things like Comic-Con and other cons and horror conventions and things like that pop up that may have them there for some signings. But is it similar, or is it typical to get them to sign stuff in very similar ways that a lot of athletes do? Does it happen near as frequently as with the athlete signings?
Yeah, I would say the frequency. So like once I started getting into it, the number of signings that happen is huge, right? There are several of them that do the Comic-Cons or the mail-ins all the time, right? But Robert Downey Jr., this was the first one he ever did, and he was doing it for charity. So that was a mail-in only type thing. So I would say almost once a quarter, like there's a significant name that's signing. So whether it's Chris Pratt or Robert Downey Jr. or Harrison Ford just did one, Samuel L. Jackson type thing, and then you get some of the second or third level actors that are participating, more frequently, type thing. So I really enjoyed getting into that part of it, and it's almost wishes I would have gotten started sooner on some of the ones that I missed out, because I think characters like James Earl Jones with Darth Vader, and Mark Hamill with Luke Skywalker, those are just going to be so iconic, and they've have since decided not to sign anymore, but they used to be rather frequent signers in the past. So I similar to like the Facebook groups I'm sure that you participate in, like the basketball private signings, football private signings, etc. There are companies that do this for the pop culture. So like SWAU and ACE and GalaxyCon, they all offer services to send in, and they take care of the items. So I've participated in those. I haven't been to any of the conventions. I'm sure that would be an overwhelming experience to try to wait in the massive line. So I would much rather just have somebody handle my card and get it back to me. But I'm looking forward to getting a couple of the bigger name Marvel guys back in the next couple of months.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So do you have what, all the original Avengers perhaps, or most of them?
I have most of them. The like Mark Ruffalo, I'm waiting to get back. I think that's probably the biggest difference between the two signings, right? So if you do an athlete signing, right, and they tell you the signing is going to be March 17th, most likely the signing is going to happen March 17th, right? Unless something comes up and it gets changed, right? Whereas with the actors, they'll just have an agreement that they're going to sign, but then it works around whatever their schedule is. So if all of a sudden they're doing a new project, it can take forever, right? So Robert Pattinson, when the new Batman movie came out, whatever, that's now over a year ago, they announced he was going to do a signing, and that was big news. He still hasn't signed, and then he just signed to do another movie and TV show. So who knows when those will come back? Like eventually they will. Like I've had some of those that have taken a year and a half before I actually got the item back. So it becomes a nice surprise when it shows up finally in the mail. But it's a lot more unpredictable than the athletes.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, back to the athletes, back to the sports cards. Do you have some that stand out as some of your favorites across the four major sports that you've had signed over the years?
Yeah. So I recently, this past weekend was the first time I went to a kart show in a long time. So Mike Schmidt was at the Philly kart show, and I had gotten his rookie card autographed several years ago through a private signing. So I thought I got to go, and I took my my nephew and my youngest brother to go to try to get them into the hobby as well, to meet Mike Schmidt. And so I really wanted to get a high end card. So I cracked an 8 to see if I could at least get it to regrade a 7 or an 8 on the backside. And then I got his first solo card signed with multiple inscriptions on on that. I'd never seen him sign his nickname on an item like a card, so I wanted to have that as something special. So that was rather cool. And then I'm waiting to get back from PSA hopefully next week. I sent in for Joe Montana rookie card. He was a favorite growing up, and so I had cracked a high grade card and had multiple inscriptions on that. But in terms of the sports stuff, I try, like I said, to stick to some of the bigger ones. Like in terms of like the through the mail successes, several years ago there was like a window when Wayne Gretzky was signing. So like probably the most nerve-wracking thing I did was send in his 1979 OPC, and then that came back, and I thought, I'm gonna double dip a little bit, and I sent in his 1979 top. So sending in cards that roll, I think were $300-$400 through the mail, and hoping that they came back was a little nauseating. I had high thoughts that it was going to happen, and so these are things I never thought I'd own his rookie card to begin with unsigned, but to have both of them autographed is really cool. I think similar to you collect 1961 basketball, right? Is that what you're working with? I like those.
Yes, I know you've got a few. Yeah,
like those are like, they're just so cool, right? The colors are so like vibrant on them. So Oscar Robinson, Jerry West, Sam Jones, like those are some of my favorite. I think that the first big investment that I actually bought as something that I thought was going to be something I thought would be cool to have in the family was Hank Aaron's last signing before he passed away. And so I remember having the conversation with my wife and saying, I just think this is going to be a good long term, and it's part of American history. And it's going to cost me, I think $800 was for the card, and it was a beat up card, and by far the most I spent on a card to that date, and another 500 or whatever to get it autographed. But I just thought, what a cool piece of history to say that you owned, right? Like the impact that he had culturally, and what he had to go through personally to achieve that record, and how long he was dominant. It's just incredible. So that was really got me started on like, well, how can I start building up more iconic and think quality over quantity. So I really like that. I've stayed away for the most part from like the prospecting of things, of like the younger players, because for the most part, their signing fees are already based on like that they're going to win multiple MVPs or championships, and those rarely pan out. So paying $200-$300 for somebody who's never played a game's autograph seems a little crazy to me. But there are a couple that I like. I think from a trend that I think is going to happen is, especially in the ultra modern, is getting dual like graded cards where like it's 10-10 type thing, and being able to use paint pens and have color matched I think is rather cool. So I have a couple like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson from the NFL that I enjoy watching, and I think that they have the potential of being like generational on their level. And I also think it's kind of silly that the market only cares for quarterbacks, right? Like I think as younger kids get in, and you think about where jersey sales are going to happen, like the big time plays are coming from the positional players, right? Like obviously the quarterback gets all the yardage and touchdowns and stuff like that. But I just see the growth in the number of kids, even locally, that are wearing, jerseys of non-Phillies or Philadelphia teams, and they tend to be more of the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson type thing. So I think that's something that will eventually catch up. That the positional players will be worth as much as the quarterbacks, type thing. And the other one I think is interesting is for hockey. At least the collectors that I have come to, the consensus is that they don't see the value in inscriptions, right? Like they tend to get just the autograph, and many of them are set collectors, which so it doesn't really matter to them what it looks like as long as it's signed. And so I think for what I consider the all-time greats, or the NHL came out with their top 100 players all time, I try to focus on things like, their nickname or their career point total or Hall of Fame or, NHL top 100 like inscriptions. Cause I think when they're gone, people are going to look back and say, why didn't I, that actually looks cool. I wish I had that card, and it's going to differentiate it from others that are, available, type things. So those are really neat, type thing. And then I do, which I know a lot of people don't like them to begin with, but like printing plates, I think are like neat to begin with, that you're actually owning the thing that made the card. So I'll get them signed. And then it adds to I think the uniqueness of them. So that's, like I said, I try to be fairly diverse in all of the sports. And, I think more so trying to think about, where it sits in the pop, and how do I get higher end cards, right? Like the trend is that so many of these cards are being signed and put on the market without any pieces. Like I was looking at the other day, I have, which is one of my favorite, is Randy Moss's Topps Chrome Refractor, right? So I have it as a 1010. It has 2 inscriptions on it, color match, paint pen. He's not allowed to do inscriptions now for paid signings, and the amount of people sending in wholesale. I was watching an eBay for Topps Chrome card, so not the refractor, and it barely did $200 slabbed, right? And the signing fee is $250 for him, right? So there's just so much volume of this, and the promoter, there's, I don't want to say laziness, that may be too harsh, but they're buying any card, right? It doesn't matter if it's widely off centered or, the dinged or whatever, they get it, signed, and then they're doing the trading card slab. And I just think that the volume of those things is hurting the overall like value of some of those, that if they took the time and got nicer end cards, and it was even if it was a 9-10, grade, that would have so much more, value, type thing. And I think I'd be curious on your thoughts that with the growing trend, I think from Fanatics, of premium charges for rookie cards, or not allowing cards to be sent in. I think those are things that are a little concerning for those that enjoy collecting signed cards.
No, I was going to say something about that for sure, because I've had a lot of thoughts lately on this topic, and I think I've spoken on it my past few interviews of athletes who are still signing today. First of all, you already have like a massive bulk of their autographs that you can pull from packs. Almost all athletes are still signing with Panini or Topps, and most of them will keep on signing with Fanatics going forward. And then you have this new trend where there are a lot more signings happening, a lot more shows that are offering autograph signings, or a lot more private signings happening, where they have like this tier system where if you're asking them to sign their rookie card, it's going to be a much higher premium tier. Like I saw Hakeem Olajuwon's last signing, where he was now charging like $300 just to sign his 86 Fleer Premier cards.
Yeah,
which his raw, a raw signed copy of that is going to be well under $300. And so if you want to get value out of that, you're going to have to send it off for grading and authenticating. You'll probably have to send it off to get it dual graded, just to see any type of value back from paying the amount to get the card raw, to get the signing done, pay the premium on that particular card's autograph, and then get it sent off to PSA. And then who knows, once you send it off to PSA, what happens?
Yeah.
Sometimes there's been funny things happening with PSA when it comes to authenticating things. And I think it was your post that talked about how you sent stuff, you cracked something that was originally like a PSA 8 when
Yeah.
they originally graded it, and then they regraded it when you sent in with it signed, and then it came back like a 7 or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah, it's all
that
over the board on that, right? Like I had
yeah.
uh my Elgin Baylor 1961 was a BGS 7, right? And I got it
Mhm.
signed. It came back perfect, right? Like no creases on the thing. I sent it in, and PSA said that they would not grade the card because they thought that it might have been trimmed or altered in some way, right? And it's like, how did one company give it a 7 and the other one saying there's evidence of trimming or whatever, right? And when I measured the card, it measures like all of the other ones that I have that are graded, right? Or I send in the
Yeah.
card, and my Jerry West 1961 was a SGC 3.5, and it came back a PSA 5, right? And so there's no consistency in it, right? And I truly believe if I cracked all of my cards out and resent them in, they'd get different grades every single time that it happened, right? Um, there's definitely a premium for the dual grade. I think it was your last guest that was talking about, which I do follow because I love the numbers of it, is that when like Don Issel, I think, announced that he's doing a signing. If you go on eBay and try to get his rookie card now, they're selling for way more than what they would have like a month ago, because there are more people out there just buying every copy that they can to get autographed in hopes that they're adding value to the card. So I've at least benefited from, before the pandemic, having a strategy of what I wanted to acquire, and based on what I thought were like the trends, right? So I guess this would have been 2000, yeah, I guess right at like 2020, 2019, somewhere in there, right? I was looking at, in football as an example, like Tom Brady's highest end rookie card in a PSA 10 was like $15,000, and Peyton Manning's, who I think is same quality quarterback, not all the championships, right, but in that tier of like top 5 all time. His rookie card was $500. And I thought there's no way that there's that much of a multiplier of Tom Brady to Peyton Manning. So I started buying up the players at that level that I thought, and so those are cards that, that I bought at 500, and during the pandemic, were worth 10,000, and they came back to earth, but like they're still up, 4 or 5 multiples of what I bought them in 2019, 2020, before, everything, exploded. And that's why, I think now anything that I'm adding has to be a higher grade. And I take a look at the cost. So I'm comfortable in most cases if I buy something that was a PSA 10 or even a PSA 8, and I crack it and it comes back a grade or 2 lower and it's signed. If the population's low and there's rarity and I'm going to do inscriptions, like I'll take that risk, because I'd rather have the card signed than have it as a PSA 10 or PSA 8 unsigned. So obviously you run the risk that it comes back like a 5, right? And then I'm upside down on it. But for the most part, I've been fortunate to come out ahead on most of what I'm doing. But I don't mind the idea that they're going to charge a premium for the rookies, because hopefully that helps with some of the pop control, because people are going to have to, decide if they're going to pay a premium for it, right? Like Joe Montana is a great example. Like for a long time, he signed for like $200 any item. It didn't matter. And now it's whatever, $1,000 for his rookie card. So that naturally takes the cards that were signed, and they were selling like $400, to now they're like $800-900. So still not the cost of the signing fee, but it's helped move the needle. And then if you really are going to go higher end on those, it's hard to replicate that. So the population of those will stay low, and there is a premium for it. What I am hoping is that they start to relieve the constraints on whether or not you can send in a card or not. And I think that they're smart enough in watching the hobby to see where the trends are. But I I remember you talked about the pack pulled, right? And this is something I'm very conscious of, there are people who only want pack pulled autographs. They want to see the tops or the upper deck, even if it's a sticker, auto on it. And I would say for most parts, I factor in like a 50% discount if it's in person, right? If it's a current thing, right? Like you're obviously can't have Jerry West signed rookie card out of a pack, but if the Justin Jefferson out of a pack, his Prism Silver sells for, we'll make it up, $500. His in-person one's probably worth $250, $300 somewhere in there, and that holds out to be relatively true. But in the early goings, there was definitely a premium that I was seeing by getting things signed in paint pen. And I can specifically remember with Justin Jefferson when he did his first signing, I thought it would be so cool to get it in color match. And so I sent in the baby blue paint pen that we now see all over Instagram and Facebook. And they actually made me sign a waiver to get my card signed because they were convinced that it was going to be damaged. And so I signed my little waiver. I got the card. I posted on social media. Everybody loved it. I sold that for $1,500. His pack pulled was only selling for $800 at that time, right? And so that promoter then told me, oh, we got 400 of those signed in baby blue the next time he did a signing, and then other people sent it in. And so I'm convinced that there are more baby blue Justin Jefferson Prism cards than there are pack pulled of that same card. But like, thinking about those trends or how you can make your item, more unique, I think is where you'll drive value out of some of this. So I think Fanatics is trying to control the pop, like all the players that they say you can't send in. They're all on Fanatics website in Beckett slabs, and the disappointing is they're all junk cards, right? Like, and they're low end, right? So the amount of Mac Jones or Justin Fields, rated rookie Donruss cards that they have signed that you can see they're struggling to sell them. My hope is that they'll realize, why not just charge people $150 and let them send in whatever they want, and we'll make our $100 or $125 on the premium that we're getting on the fee versus getting the card signed and slabbed ourselves and then having it sit in inventory and then maybe get $200 for that card, or if that, right? We'll see where that happens over time, but it's something that I find to be really disappointing as a collector when you want your card signed, right? You don't want somebody else's type thing. There's something kind of cool about, especially on the vintage stuff. Like I like the idea that I'm cracking out a card and like you're holding it and it just feels like a piece of history. Like I'd much rather do that and get it signed than buy one already signed on eBay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot to factor in when to think about what's going to happen with these cards long term, especially like I said with the modern guys, the guys that are still signing today, because there's a lot being presented to them now. There's so much more than there ever was before that's being presented to get signed on a pretty regular basis. And a lot of them are getting smarter about it, or their agents are getting smarter about upcharging for certain cards, knowing that certain cards, like now, I don't remember what it was exactly, but the upcharge for the 1980 Topps Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Julius Erving trio card to get signed now is like well over $1,000. So
$1,000 on his alone, right? And I think he renegotiated. Like there was 2 years that he didn't sign as he was renegotiating his thing, and he was waiting for Larry Bird and Dr. J to negotiate theirs first, and then he came out at $1,000. I remember that was painful to see.
But that is going to probably help the long term value of that card, because we'll probably see fewer and fewer of those signed. But now when it comes to like a lot of the modern stuff and modern players, it's like you really have to find something truly unique and truly special, because there's just so much that's going to be out there. Like some I think one of the smart things are maybe some of like the Prism refractor stuff in particular, because unfortunately, Prism has never really done on card autos in their products, and so the sticker autos just don't look near as good on those Prism cards. Like, and it's still I still don't understand it today. Like why they do on card for optic but not for prism. It still doesn't make sense to me. Whatever. Uh, so maybe getting some of those really unique refractors, color match refractors with a color match signing or
Yeah,
something like that. Those things probably will stand out and probably stand the test of time. But there's going
yeah,
to be so much out there, and you just have to really factor in a lot of different things of whether or not it probably is going to be truly cost effective or worth it to go through the
yeah,
struggle of getting it signed and then getting it back and then getting it to PSA or even BGS to get it authenticated and hope to
yeah,
get it back. All these things that's involved in doing this. I still personally love it, and I know you do too. But I think it's good to talk about it with other and let other people know that there's a lot to really kind of consider when it comes to doing these
yeah,
type of card signings. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I think the other, the factor of things is to, understand where you can acquire them, right? Like I would never pay, $150 for Eric Dickerson at a public signing unless he was my favorite player and I wanted to meet him, right? I'll send $10, donation to him through the mail and, turn my $5 card into a $40 card, instantly. Like those things are still like real type things. Or, another one I
Yeah.
love is, why pay a premium for Jim Kelly when I can make a $75 donation to help find a cure for the disease that took his son's life at an early age. Like that's like a win-win-win, right? So I do that all day long. So I think if you're smart and you research it, all the better. I think the other part is that focus on the things that you're going to like, that if you're stuck with it, right, that you're going to
Hmm.
enjoy it, or be really willing to pay a premium to get things back quick. So like a friend of mine, we decided we just wanted to see if it was even possible to do, but like First Bowman is really popular in baseball, and everybody was chasing. I may pronounce his name wrong, but it was Marcelo Mayer. I have no idea who he is other than he was a prospect for the Red Sox. And everybody's chasing the product, and he was doing a signing with TriStar. And so we're like, why would anybody want to have a sticker, auto of this? They're paying, upwards of, $400 or $500 for this, and his signing is $45, and the card's $15 for his refractor. Let's get it and get an inscription and rush it order to PSA. And we had, I think, just under $100 all in the card, and we listed it 7-day auction, sold for $650, which is more than the pack pulled. So it showed that, one, being able to do something unique with color match, and then also do like first round draft pick or whatever, that there's an audience for that. But the moment we did that, the next signing he did, there's an ungodly amount of those now, available on the market, and they, barely sell for the cost of, acquiring them. So, speed to market, really, really matters. And I think the other thing I'm trying to do now, that most people will think, oh, I ruined the card, or it's crazy to do, but everybody's chasing in the ultra modern, like the rookie patch autos and stuff like that. So, and often they'll have stickers on those, which is crazy if it's going to be high end. Like, how's it high end and have a
Yeah.
sticker auto? So I got this was out of National Treasures, but I color matched the players. They have nice patches on them. They're actually game worn. It's numbered to 25. Like that, I think to me is nicer than what you would pull from a pack. And I believe that there are more people who would look at that and go, wow, that's much cooler than what I was getting out of a pack. Now, I hope that Fanatics, when they take over, we start seeing more creativity from them, and maybe I'll fall in love with pack pull. But from the moment now, I think it's really cool to be able to get whatever you want signed, how you want signed, with inscriptions and the paint pens or the different colored Sharpies or whatever, for your own personal collection. So it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think it'd be good to wrap up here. But I want to make sure to give you time to mention anything else you wanted to mention in terms of things you're kind of looking for or collecting, or just mention, your social media, Facebook groups, eBay, eBay ID, any of that stuff you wanted to go ahead and shout out.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. I'm autographed sports cards. Feel free to reach out if you have questions about, getting into autographed cards. I'm happy to answer any questions and share my experiences. And if there's something you see, I am consolidating some of the things to get down to, like I said, maybe top 25 athletes in each of the major sports, and then some of more iconic, actors and pop culture stuff. So you'll find my eBay store link on my Instagram. But I really appreciate you reaching out and getting a chance to talk, and I hope we get to talk again soon.
Absolutely. I'm going to be reaching out to you plenty for sure, and I really appreciate you coming on,
Yeah.
sharing your story. It was a great story, and it was great talking to you about
Yeah.
about the hobby. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, take care. Have a wonderful weekend.